Hey guys, welcome to the video for quadratic applications and regression. We're in Unit 7A. Our essential question is, how can quadratics be used to model and solve real-world problems? All right, so the first part of this is kind of a review because we have talked a little bit about applications before. So number one, we have Timmy has a t-shirt cannon that models the path h of t equals negative 16t squared plus 72t, where t is the time in seconds and h is the height in meters. Okay. So let's go ahead and underline some important information. T is the time in seconds, and what is h? Well, h is the height in meters. Okay, so t is the time in seconds, and h is the height in meters. Now they gave us an equation. The equation they gave us was h of t equals negative 16t squared plus 72t. Now, the first part of this says, how high is the t-shirt at 2 seconds? So if Timmy is launching a t-shirt out of a cannon, it's going to start off on the ground. Whoops. It's going to start off on the ground and then do what? Well, he launches it in the air, then eventually it's going to fall on the ground, right? So if we're looking at how high the t-shirt is at 2 seconds, it should be somewhat in the air, correct? Well, there's two ways to solve this problem. It wants to know when the t-shirt will be 2 seconds, right? Well, 2 seconds is your time, so you could plug in 2 for t. So let's do that. Negative 16 parentheses 2 squared plus 72t. Now, where did I get, 72 parentheses 2, I mean. So where did I get these numbers from? Well, this number is from the equation above. Okay, so I'm using the equation, and I'm using it to its ability, right? Like I'm using the information that I've been given to help me solve this problem. Okay, well, anywhere I saw t, I plugged in a 2. Now, why did I plug in 2 for t? Remember, 2 is your time. That's your time in seconds. So that's why I plugged in a 2. And then you can punch all of that in straight into the calculator. Negative 16 parentheses 2 parentheses squared plus 72 parentheses 2 parentheses. And you should get 80. Well, what does that mean? That means at 2 seconds, the t-shirt is at 80 meters. Okay, so that's how high it is at 2 seconds. Well, what's the maximum height of the t-shirt? So if I'm asking you what the maximum height is, what am I really asking you here? I'm asking you to find the vertex. I'm asking you to find the maximum height of this t-shirt. If I'm asking you to find the vertex, right, the vertex, the highest point, how could you do that? Well, I know how to find the vertex using the axis of symmetry formula. The axis of symmetry formula is x equals negative b divided by 2a. Why does this help me? Because it gives me the x value of my vertex. So let's go ahead and write down our equation. We have y equals negative 16x squared plus 72x. Now, why am I not using the t's? I don't really have to use t's, right? In a calculator, when I type it in, I'm going to have to use x anyway. So I'm replacing my t's with my x's and then my height with the y. Okay, so this is my equation, right? Okay, so what do? Well, we're going to identify a, b, and c first so we can use the formula. Well, what's my a here? A is negative 16. What's b? 72. What's my c? It's 0. But do I need my c value to use that formula? No. Okay, so let's use the formula. We have x equals negative b. Well, my b is 72 divided by 2 times my a, which is negative 16. That's going to equal negative 72, and then 2 times negative 16 is negative 32. So then for my x value, I end up getting positive 2.25. Negative divided by negative is a positive. My bad. Okay, so x equals 2.25. So that means for my vertex, the x value is 2.25. Well, what's the y value? How can I find that? Well, if I plug in anywhere I see an x with 2.25, I can find my y value of that vertex. Okay, so I have negative 16 parentheses 2.25 plus 72 parentheses 2.25. Okay. Oh, I forgot the squared. That's the most common mistake, actually, is when we plug in numbers, we always forget that squared at the top. Negative 16 parentheses 2.25 parentheses squared plus 72, parentheses 2.25, and I get 81. So I found the vertex, but what does that help me? Well, it says, what is the maximum height of this t-shirt? Well, the maximum height would be 81 meters. And you're like, well, isn't there an easier way to do all this stuff? Well, kind of, and I'm going to show you in a second how we could do some of these things easier. Like part A, there's a way easier way to do that one. And for part D, I want to show you an easy way in the calculator also. Okay, now C is, when will the t-shirt reach its maximum height? So what was the maximum height? It was 81 meters, right? Well, when will it reach that height? So we're looking for the time of when it reaches 81 meters. Well, if I look back at when I looked at the vertex, if this is the height, then what does that mean? That's the time. That's the time it reaches 81 meters. So the time that it reaches 81 meters is 2.25 seconds. Okay. D is, when will the t-shirt hit the ground? So I'm going to show you guys actually, starting with part A, how can we do this a little bit easier. So I'm going to type in this yellow equation into my calculator. So I'm going to go to my camera real quick. Okay, so I'm going to clear that out. I have the y equals, and I'm going to type in my equation, negative 16. Now I can't type in t, so I'm going to type in x squared, it's a glare, plus 72x. Okay, so this is the equation that they gave me. I just couldn't write any t's in there. Now I'm going to go to my table, second graph. Now by default, when you start up your table, if you've reset your calculator, it always starts at 0. Okay, but you can change it. So for example, if you don't want it to start at x equals 0, you can have it start at 50. So for example, right, this isn't really necessary for now, but I do want to show you. To change where your table starts, you see how it says table set here? To change it, I want to do second, that button, window button. Because table set's in blue, we got to hit the blue button to activate it. You can tell your table where to start. So if I wanted to start it at 50, I would type in 50, second graph to go to my table, and my table would start at 50. Again, that's not necessary for now. Whoops. That's not necessary for now, so I'm going to have it start at 0. Now the first question asks for, how high is the t-shirt at 2 seconds? Remember, seconds is our x, right? So let's look for where x is 2. Well, when x is 2, what do you have for y? 80. So when your t-shirt is at 2 seconds, it's at 80 meters. Did we have to do any math to get that number in the calculator? No, we just had to type it in. Now, the part where you're asked to find the vertex, you do need to do the work for that one, because I'll show you. What do you notice about your t-shirt? Well, it starts off at 0 feet and then it gets launched into the air, right? So it gets a little bit higher and a little bit higher, but then what happens? It's starting to go down. Normally when I ask you to find the vertex, I ask you to find the one without a twin, but none of these have twins because they're not perfect whole numbers here. So when I found the vertex, it was actually 81 meters. It looks like it might be 80 because that's the biggest it gets to, but that's not true because we don't know what's in between 2 and 3 seconds here, right? So at 2.25 seconds, that's how we got 81 meters. We actually had to solve that one. Part D says, when will the t-shirt hit the ground? So I'm basically asking you, well, if I launch the t-shirt, when is the height going to be 0 again, right? So the t-shirt starts off at 0 feet, and then it launches into the air, and then I'm asking, when is it going to land again? Well, at 4 seconds, how high is it? It's at 32 meters. But at 5 seconds, it's at negative 40 meters? That doesn't make sense, right? So that means somewhere in between here, it lands at 0 feet. So in between 4 and 5 seconds is when our t-shirt will hit the ground. Between 4 and 5. Because in between 4 and 5 seconds, that's when your meters is 0. So we're having to estimate there. So between 4 and 5 seconds. All right, moving on to the second page. Now the second page is, we are not given the equation, so we must find the equation by using regression. Back in Unit 4, we learned something called linear regression. And you don't have to write this, but I do want to remind you. Now back then I would give you some random points on a table, and if you were to plot them, they would be random, like super random. And then you would ask your calculator to make an equation, and so it would make a line that would go through some of your points, like this. And the reason why it was called linear regression was because it was making a line. Where here we're in Unit 7 and we're talking about quadratics, no more linear, right? So if I'm asked to use quadratic regression, my calculator is going to make a quadratic. So for example, if I had a bunch of random points that kind of look like this, the quadratic would probably make is something that looks like this. It's going to draw a quadratic that goes through those points, okay? So that's what regression means. So we're going to use quadratic regression to find a model for the data in the table. Now I have some steps over here as a review, but let's just talk about our table first. We're given a table where we have time in seconds and height in feet. Well, which one of these would be our x values? Well, your x values would be your time, because it's seconds, right? Time is always going to be your x. So that means height is y. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to find our regression equation. Well, in order to do that, we've got to follow the steps on the side. So I am going to be switching to my calculator now. So if I don't have the iPad popped up, that is why. So make sure you have a set of your notes while I'm doing the steps in the calculator. All right, so I'm going to pull up my notes for this on my laptop so that I can see the numbers because I don't have all of the numbers. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is the first step is stat. So I'm going to hit the stat button, which is located right here, the stat. And then the next step is edit. So I'm going to hit the edit button. Now you're going to see a bunch of lists. Now do you remember when we used to type in our lists? So that means after I do stat edit, the next thing it wants me to do is L1 and L2. Well, the question is which one's L1 and which one's L2? L1 is always going to be your x and L2 is always your y. Just like a table, the left side of your table is always going to be the x. So I'm going to go to my camera here. L1, I'm going to type in 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I'm not getting these numbers anywhere, right? They're on your notes. So these numbers are on your notes. And then I'm going to scroll over to the right here. And I'm going to type in the new numbers here, 9, 7, 3, 4, 8, 10, 19. Now I want you to look at something with your y values. What do you notice about the height here? It starts off at 9 and then what happens? It starts to get lower, right? It starts to go down. So it's going at 9 and then it goes down, but then what happens? Then it starts to go back up. So your quadratic is going like this. It starts off high, goes down, and goes back up. So that's kind of what the picture would look like if I were to plot all these points. Now before you move on, you should always check to make sure that you have the same number of numbers in each column. So if you have 6 numbers in this column, then you need to have 6 in that column. If you have 3 in this column, 3 in that column. Okay, and the next thing you should always check for is you make sure all of the numbers that you typed in were exactly as it was on your paper, okay? If one number is just a little off, it's going to mess up your whole equation. Okay, so after you type in your L1 and L2, you're going to hit stat, which is located right here, stat, and you're going to scroll over to calc. Now normally we would do linear regression and we would type in 4, but this is quadratic regression. So which number do you think that is? Number 5. Now you can scroll down to 5 or you can just press the number 5 on your calculator. Number 5. So you type in number 5 and then it brings you to this screen. Notice how x is L1 and y is L2. You're going to go all the way down and you hit calculate. Okay, and then you should be given this. So let's go ahead and fill in our list over here. So after you do calc, the option you want to press is number 5 for quadratic regression, so quad reg. Okay, now in my calculator, on my screen, I see this, okay? I'm just going to show you that for a little bit, and I'm going to switch back to my iPad, my Notability. So it's giving me an equation. What form is this in? It's in standard form, right? And it's giving me my A, my B, and my C. Now, when I write this equation, I'm going to round to 2 decimal places. So let's write down what they gave me. They wrote y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Well, what was the a value in my calculator? It was 1.08. Okay, I'm rounding to 2 decimals. And then I have x squared. And then the b value they gave me, so I'll go ahead and write all my numbers here. So 1.08333. B was negative 5.0357. And C was 9.595238. Okay, so those were the numbers. So I'm going to use those numbers to help me. Now, if you don't have a calculator, that's why I'm writing those numbers there. So A is 1.08 because I'm rounding to 2 decimal places. x squared plus, what's your b here? Well, your b here is minus 5.04. Remember, you're rounding to 2 decimal places, so this 3 would be bumped up to a 4. X, and then your c is positive 9.60. The reason why it's 60 because this 9 gets bumped to a 0, which makes this become 60 because the 5 is over here. So that gets bumped to 60. So that is my equation. Okay? So once I have the equation, now I can answer the questions. And I'm going to use that equation to help me answer the questions. So it says, what is the height at 10 seconds? Well, is seconds our x or our y? Seconds is our x. So it's asking me to find when x is equal to 10. Remember, seconds is x, so you're looking at when x is equal to 10. So I'm going to type in this blue equation in y equals. Okay, I'm going to type it in. So I have to go to my camera so you can see what I'm doing. You're going to go to y equals. You're going to type in 1.08x squared minus 5.04x, sorry, there's a glare, minus 5.04x plus 9.60. So this is the equation that we got from our calculator, and we rounded to 2 decimal places in each one. And now I'm going to go to my table, second graph. Now remember, I'm looking for the height when it's at 10 seconds. Seconds is x, so I'm looking for 10 in my x column. Well, at 10 seconds, it's at 67.2 feet. See, was there any work for this? No, not really. I'm using my calculator to help me. The whole point of this is, can I use all of my resources in my class to help me get these problems and get the solutions, right? Okay, the next part is, how many seconds will it take for the height to reach 160 feet? We want to know when it will reach 160 feet. Well, is 160 feet x or y? Feet is going to be our y, right? Feet is our y on the table. So we're looking at y when it is 160. So we're going to go into our y column and search for 160. So I'm going to scroll. Now, which column am I looking for 160 in? I'm looking in the y column because the y is the feet. I'm looking for 160. So notice it passed 160, right? Went 126, 150, and then 177. There is no 160. So in between what 2 seconds is there 160 feet? It's going to be between 14 and 15 seconds because 160 is going to lie in between those seconds. So how many seconds will it take? Well, between 14 and 15 seconds. All right, and we're down to our last problem. So here we're given a table and we're asked to find the regression model. Now the regression model is still just the equation. They want an equation to model the data that they have given you, okay? So this is a brand new problem. So I'm gonna go to my camera and I need to type in my notes so that I know what the numbers are. I need to type in, so Quadratic Regression AB, okay. So the first step is to get our equation is we gotta type in the data, right? So we gotta hit stat and edit. So hit enter for edit. Now there's stuff typed in. To clear the list, you wanna go all the way up to the list title. You're gonna hit the button that says clear, and then nothing happens, right? But then you press down and then it clears. So you're gonna do the same thing. You're gonna scroll over, go up to L1, hit the clear button, and then you press down. So now your lists are cleared. Now, how do I know which one to type in which? Because there's no time here, right? There's ticket price and then there's profit. Well, your ticket price by default, because it's on the left, is your X, and profit will be your Y. So that means that your ticket price is L1 and profit is L2. So I'm going to go over here, 2, 5, 8, 11, 14, 17. So those are the 6 numbers that I was given: 2600, 6500, 8600, 8900, 74, 41. I always check to make sure everything is typed in exactly as I see it on paper, and I make sure both of my lists have the same amount of numbers. Once that's good, I hit Stat, and I want to calculate the equation. So I'm going to scroll over to Calculate, and I'm going to click Quadratic Regression, number 5. I'm going to go all the way to the bottom to say Calculate and hit Enter. And then I get A, B, and C. So these A, B, and C's were nice numbers. They weren't all decimals, so now I don't have to round. So our equation is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. The calculator says that a is equal to negative 100, b is 2,000, and c is negative 1,000. Okay, so what would be our equation? It'd be y equals negative 100x squared plus 2,000x. Don't forget about your x's. Some people just write the numbers and don't even put the x's there. And then our c is minus 1,000. So this is our quadratic equation, our regression. Whoa, what happened there? This is our quadratic equation, our regression model here. Okay. Now, based on our equation, what would the profit be if the ticket price is $10? Ticket price is $10. Is ticket price your X or your Y? Your ticket price is your X. So I'm looking in the X column and I'm looking for 10, okay? I'm looking for 10 in the X column because ticket price is X. So I'm going to type in this equation in Y equals. So Y equals, clear what I have, negative 100x squared plus 2,000x minus 1,000. Okay, so this is the equation I was given based on my calculator and what it gave me, right? And then I'm going to look at the table. Second graph. I am looking for I'm looking for 10 in the X column because ticket price is X. Well, when X is 10, what's my Y? 9,000. So that means when my ticket price is $10, my profit is $9,000. How did I get that? Okay, let's review, right? Ticket price is X. I'm looking for 10 in the X column, okay? So when my ticket price is $10, then my profit is $9,000, okay? So for example, when you go to like a fair, you have to pay a ticket price to get in, and so the profit is how much money they're making. So if everyone pays $10 for the tickets, the place is gonna make $9,000, right? Okay, now the last question is, at what price will the profit be $0? Well, if the profit is $0, that means they didn't make any money, correct? So how would they not make any money? Well, if they made the ticket prices $0. So if the ticket price is $0, they make nothing. So if the ticket price is, so if tickets are $0. But what else? What could also make the profit be $0? How could the fair or the company or whatever is selling these tickets, what would make them make no money? Well, what if they put the ticket prices really high? If they make it too high, are people going to want to come? No, right? So we're looking to see what ticket price will make our profit $0. So again, ticket price, we're looking for the ticket price. We're looking to see how high it needs to be in order for our profit to be 0. So let's go to our calculator here, and let me show you something. Let me go to when X is 0. Right, do you see how at 0, they're not making any money, right? But once they make it $1, then they start making $900 for their profit. So we're scrolling to see, right? So at $10 for a ticket, they make $9,000 profit. Well, then it starts to go back down because once ticket prices are too high, they're not making as much money because people aren't coming. So at what point do your ticket prices stop making money? Well, at $18 a ticket, you make $2,600. At $19, you're making $900. But at $20, you're losing money. So in between $19 and $20 a ticket, you're going to make 0 for your profit. So this is going to be between, or if you're in between $19 and $20. Because if you're in between these two prices, you're still making $0. The profit is 0. All right, so that is quadratic regression. So the most important thing is that you know the steps to type these into the calculators and how to use your equation. So we use our equation by typing it into y equals, And then we got to know where on our tables to look. So if it's saying 10 seconds, and I know seconds is x, I'm looking for 10 in the x column. Whereas in this part where it says how long will it take for it to reach 160 feet, well, feet is going to be my y's because the height is my y. So that means in my table, I'm looking for 160 in the y. So you do need to be able to interpret what is being asked of you. If you have any questions, just please feel free to come in for tutoring.